Hey guys, it's Dr. May. How are you today? So we're going to be doing one of my favorite skills, and this is validation. Now, if you're experienced in original DBT, then chances are you remember validation because validation is explored a lot in original DBT. And I found it's one of the skills that people tend to remember and use the most. It's really helpful. And radically open DBT also goes over validation. And I'm sure you're thinking, well, all right, I learned regular validation in original DBT. Why do I need another video about this? Well, radically open DBT adds some stuff to what original DBT has to offer. So if you check this video out, I'm going to go over the radically open DBT version of validation, and I promise you're going to learn something new. Okay, so it might add to your validation repertoire and make it even richer in terms of the way you're able to apply it. Okay, so here we go. I'm looking forward to sharing this with you today. All right, so they call this using validation to signal, there we go, social inclusion. Okay, so if you remember, radically open DBT talks a lot about our tribal nature. Okay, so human beings originally were in tribes, right? And that's how we survived. We needed each other to help each other out to survive in this difficult world, okay? And so feeling socially included is kind of wired into us. It's very important, okay? And we feel safe when we're part of a tribe. And so we look for signals that people are accepting us and including us, okay? So we're looking for feedback that we're okay, that we're worthy tribe members, and we're included in this group, okay? So one of the things we look for is validation from other tribal members, so to speak, okay? So even if you're not living in a quote unquote tribe, you're probably living with family members, friends, co-workers, and so forth, and you want to feel included, right? So of course we're looking for validation, right? And people are looking to us to validate them as well, and that helps us to keep our relationships healthy and strong, okay? So what is validation? So let's define it together. I'm sure you might have a sense of it, but here's a definition for you, okay? So validation involves communicating understanding and acceptance of another person's feelings, thoughts, desires, actions, or experiences, okay? Understanding is a great synonym for validation. So when I explain it to people, I often pair the word validation and understanding a lot in the beginning, especially just so people kind of get the gist of what validation is all about, okay? So if you're in a tribe, and you show another tribe member that you understand where they're coming from, they feel included. They feel part of the tribe, that they're understood and that you get it and that you share this human bond of experience, okay? So really, really important. So when we're validating, we're basically just showing understanding and acceptance. When we're validating, we're not necessarily trying to change anybody, okay, or alter their experience in any way. I mean, there's certainly change strategies that are available to us, and validation and change can kind of go hand in hand sometimes. But if you're just doing the validation piece, you're just demonstrating through your words and your actions that you understand, okay? And we're signaling to the person safety, okay? So social safety, really important for us in our connections. And when we signal validation, we're showing them that it's safe for them to share their inner experience, that we're going to respond to it in such a way that they feel heard and understood and accepted. So that makes people feel safe. Okay, so if you think about times when people communicated that to you, it probably was a big sigh of relief, especially if it was something painful to share. Okay, so we could give people that same courtesy by giving them validation as well. Okay, another little tip, which we'll go over in more detail later, is that it's not even just about the words, it's about our actions, right? So our actions and our social signaling sometimes are even more important than exactly what we say. So even if you're not really completely sure what the right thing is to say, there's still ways to non-verbally communicate that you're listening and you're trying to understand, okay? And of course, like I was starting to say, healthy relationships depend on mutual validation. So if you're in a relationship with somebody, it works out the best if you validate that person and that person validates you, okay? All right, so that's the little intro. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about this. So with validation, it's so to speak like, it isn't like a formula that you can use that works for everybody. Like if you just say this phrase, or if you just do this thing, it's always going to be perfect. Okay. So there's really no such thing as perfect. There's a lot of like art in the science. Okay. And is no one size fits all. So you really have to tune in to the other person and get feedback from them about what feels validating. Like you might try to say something validating and they don't quite accept it. So you might have to try again. Or you might have to, change your technique a little bit so that they really feel heard by you, okay? And you could use that same technique on a different person and it may not work exactly the same way, right? So you have to adapt yourself to different people and really pay attention to how they're accepting your attempts at validation, right? So you could have a good heart and really try, but if they don't feel it, you have to try again, okay? All right. So if you remember a few lessons ago, there was a skill called flexible mind rocks on, okay? And the K in rock has to do kindness first and foremost, right? So when we're relating to people, it's very important for us to be kind. So just to pull it together, let's talk about the difference between validation and kindness. Now, of course, both are really important, right? We want to validate people and be kind to people. It's not like we're weighing one better than the other, but they are a little bit different, right? So let's talk about exactly why they're different. So like I said before, validation is about communicating understanding and acceptance of another person's experience, right? When you're kind to somebody, validation can feel kind, but kindness is really about helping somebody with something, right? Or preventing harm from happening. And that's a way to be kind. And we also can do it in an altruistic manner without really expecting anything in return, right? It's not like there's strings attached where, hey, I was kind to you, you owe me something, right? Hopefully if we, are truly doing it out of our heart, we're doing it for the sake of being kind and not because something will come back to us, right? Although it often does. All right, so that's sort of the difference. All right, so now if you're familiar with original DBT's validation, they have 6 levels of validation. Okay, so radically open DBT has 7 levels of validation. And there's a little bit of overlap, but they're actually, they're a little bit different. Okay, so it's not like, side by side exact comparison. Okay, so check this out and see what you think. All right, so the first level is being attentive. Okay, so just giving someone your full attention in itself and socially signaling that you're really paying attention to what they have to say and to their body language and nonverbal expressions in itself can feel really validating, right? So if we look at the guy on the right, he's using a lot of social signals that show that he's very receptive and attentive to his friends, right? So eyebrow wags, right? Okay, eye contact, affirmative head nods, like if someone's talking and you're kind of nodding your head to show that you're listening, a smile, if appropriate, prolonged shoulder shrug, which kind of shows humility, as well as the open-handed gestures, okay, and also open hands show receptiveness, like you're ready to receive something from the universe, right? And also turning your body toward the person, okay? So even if you were actually listening, but you didn't show this body language, the person may find it invalidating, right? So it's not just enough to listen, you have to show that you're listening, all right? So if this kid was kind of like facing a different direction or on his phone or closing his eyes or something like that, the other person might have taken that neutral signal as something negative, right? So you really have to be very clear that you're listening, all right? So that's number 1. Level 2, reflecting back, okay? And that signals we're in the same tribe. So reflecting back is pretty simple. You listen to what the person has to say, and then you kind of reflect back by saying to them some of what they just told you using their words or phrases, okay? So here's an example. Let's say this is a husband and wife, okay? And he said, the kid's behavior is getting me really frustrated, okay? So the wife sees how he's upset. She puts her arm around him, which is a social signal for, I want more intimacy and connectedness. And she says, so you're pretty frustrated by the way the kids are acting these days, right? So she's using the frustrated that he used, okay? She's kind of re-saying what he said, okay? but she has to say it with humility, because even though she's kind of saying what he said, he may not feel like what she said is right. He might like correct her a little bit or say, no, 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 that's not exactly what I meant, or he might further explain, and then she might have to try again and reflect back again, right? So sometimes it's a little bit of a back and forth. Okay, it's normal to have this kind of negotiation of like, let me make sure I got this right. Okay, so that's why they say we're kind of doing it with humility. That, I'm not just going to assume that because I reflected it back, that of course I got it right because I said what you just said. Like the person may not have felt it that way for one reason or another, right? Maybe it was the tone we used, or once they heard their words from us, they realized they didn't say it the way they meant to say it, right? So there's all different reasons. So we shouldn't be insulted by it, right? It's just part of the communication process, all right? All right, so level 3, empathic mind reading. Okay, so we're getting a little psychic here, so to speak. So basically what that is you're really attending to the other person's body language, and you're trying to put to words things that maybe they're not able to articulate yet. Okay, so this is a good technique if the other person seems kind of withdrawn or shut down. So if we look at the example on the picture on the left, the woman looks like she's a little shut down, right? Her head is down, she's covering her face, she's looking down, or her eyes are closed. So maybe she's having a hard time articulating what's bothering her, or she just doesn't have the words or whatever, right? So let's say her boyfriend or her husband is now trying to put to words what he thinks is going on with her, right? To help her articulate it and show that he's trying to read her body language and understand. So he's going to use some awareness continuum phrases, which is from a few lessons back. So awareness continuum is basically saying, using terms like, I am aware of imagining, thinking, feeling, sensing, blank. Okay, so he's saying, I'm aware of imagining that you're upset with me for coming home late for dinner. Okay, and he may be exactly right, and he might perk up because he got it and start to talk, or he might be a little wrong and he might have to try again, kind of like we were just saying in level 2. All right. Other times we might want to use empathic mind reading is if you're talking to somebody and they're trying to explain something that's going on, but it's hard for them to put words to it, right? So sometimes when we have a really challenging experience or an emotional experience, it's hard to articulate it, right? So let's say the person's struggling to articulate it and you have some idea of what they're trying to say and you help them put it into words. That's also kind of an empathic mind reading. So let's say we're going to the picture on the right now. The girl on the right just found out her boyfriend was cheating on her, and she's trying to explain like why she's upset or how she feels like she's the only one or whatever's going on. And let's say her mother is saying, if I were in your shoes, I would be devastated to find out my boyfriend cheated on me, right? So she's trying to help the girl see, like, I see how upset you are. Maybe the girl couldn't quite say what the feeling was, and now the mother's trying to tell her, I could see how devastated you must be, because she's picking up on something non-verbally that the girl's trying to express, okay? So in both cases, you could try these phrases, and that could help you with humility, like kind of help phrase what the person might be thinking. So I'm aware of imagining, and if I were in your shoes, right? So you're trying to tell the person, well, I don't know exactly what your experience is, but I can only imagine, like, if I were in your shoes, this is how I would feel. And again, the person could correct you if they choose to. All right, now, level 4. So this one is when you're trying to help show understanding about how the person may have responded, because you maybe know something about them. Maybe based on their history, their response makes a lot of sense, okay? So, if you know somebody that's had a difficult family life, or, a traumatic history, or problems with their boss, or whatever, you might, in that context, understand why they responded a certain way, right? Because we kind of like don't respond in a vacuum. It's not just about the present circumstance, it's about all the stuff that we carry with us, right? So let's say in this sample, it's a father and a son, okay? So the father says, I can understand why you started cyberbullying that kid who was picking on you for so long, but, okay, so if you've been picked on by somebody over and over and you can't take it anymore, you could kind of understand why you would want to retaliate in some way, right? A lot of us have that impulse, right? If people pick on us, we want to get back at them, right? But if you notice, he's ending this by saying, but, okay? Because sometimes when we validate, right, we could validate the reasoning behind the behavior. We could understand why the person got to the point where they acted the way they acted. However, you could still disagree with their actions, especially if they happen to be dangerous or, you know, self-harming, or, you know, scary or against the law, right, or whatever. Okay, so for example, like an original DBT, some people, you know, self-injure as one way to cope, or they use substances, or they engage in eating disorder behavior, or they become aggressive, right? And you can understand what led them to that. And maybe because it's been an ongoing pattern of something that led them to choose this behavior today. But at the same time, you might really express to the person, but I care about you and your safety and the safety of others. And I hope that we could figure out a different way to respond the next time. Okay, so that's kind of the validation and the change side by side. Okay, so you know, that's why sometimes it's followed with a but. Okay, but the change happens more easily, of course, if you first show understanding. Okay, so level 5, this is what they call normalizing. All right, so sometimes when you're really suffering, a part of it is because you feel like I'm the only one, or I can't imagine anyone's gone through this, or I feel totally isolated in my shame and this problem that I'm having. And that really feels like you separated from the tribe. Okay. So when you normalize a person's experience, it makes them feel like, no, we go through this too, right? Everybody goes through this. You never left the tribe. You're part of the tribe, because what you're experiencing is a normal human experience. And a lot of us go through it. Guess what, right? You're not the only one. Isn't that good, right? So that could be a powerful social safety signal. It could be a big relief for the person to know that other people might respond just the way they are, all right? So let's look at this example here. So let's say it's a mother and a teenage daughter, right? So the mother says, of course you're hurt that your friend Emily didn't invite you to her party. Most people in that situation would be really hurt too, right? So she's not a freak, right? No one likes being left out and rejected, right? So of course she's trying to normalize the girl's reaction. All right, so see how that works? All right, level 6. All right, so this is signaling trust and kind of showing the person, I believe in you. I like this one a lot. I think this is great if you're working with somebody, or if you have, let's say, a family member, a friend who is a little hesitant to really own up to their own confidence, right? Maybe they're relying on you a lot for help, or they're afraid to take the next step, or they're afraid of a change, or they're afraid to try something new. And signaling to the person like, I believe in you. I know that deep down, you have the ability to do this. You have that strength, you know, and I trust that if you give it a try, you're probably going to be okay, right? This is great for, you know, even adolescents, like parents and adolescents, like we just saw on the last slide. Like sometimes when you're growing up and you're taking that new step in your life, you're a little scared about it, right? But this is saying, listen, you got this, you got it, right? So some of the phrases you could kind of keep in mind for signaling this is in the dialogue bubble there. I trust you to do the right thing. I believe in your competence. I have faith in your ability to follow through with prior commitments, right? So you're showing the person, even if you don't believe it, I believe it. I see that good in you. I see that strength in you. Okay, isn't that awesome, right? We got to do this to ourselves too sometimes, right? Don't we forget how strong we can be sometimes, right? So this is kind. It treats the other person the way we want to be treated. It gives them the benefit of the doubt. And it can even be expressed playfully. Come on, man, I know you could do it, right? Or whatever it happens to be. All right, so that's level 6. And finally, level 7. All right, so this is reciprocity. This one's kind of cool too. It's really like matching someone else's level of excitement, or a level of sadness, or a level of emotionality, to kind of show that you're really with that person, right? So let's say in the picture on the left, you know, something great happened at work, whatever was going on in that little, you know, group over there. And they're all equally excited. They're giving a high five. They're all smiling. They're matching each other's excitement. Okay. The other hand on the right, one girl's really sad and the other one looks very empathic, very concerned, right? So she's kind of matching a little bit that the original girl's on the left level of sadness or grief, right? So it's part of the compassion, the suffering with, right? You're kind of feeling along with the person and showing them like, I'm with you, okay? Really powerful social signal. And it shows that we care, you know, and that we kind of could relate and we feel similarly and we're kind of on the same level right now, right? So it's a really, it's nonverbal in a lot of ways, but it's really important. Okay, so that's the 7 levels. So let's gonna do one last slide about invalidation. Okay, so while we all seek validation, right? Because it gives us that social signal that we're part of the tribe, we belong, our feelings make sense and all that stuff, which is great. We can't expect to be validated all the time. First of all, not everybody knows how to validate. Some people grew up and never had the experience of being validated, and so therefore they can't give it to other people. Other times you might be acting in a way that's very difficult to validate, right? If you're yelling and screaming and carrying on with a customer service clerk, that person might have a hard time validating you because they're feeling threatened, okay? So sometimes, you know, it might be something that we have to learn from. So like a lot of things in radically open DBT, they say that invalidation could be an opportunity for self-inquiry, right? So to really reflect on ourselves and the other person involved in the situation, right? So did I do something that's hard to validate? Is it a little unfair for me to expect someone to validate this when it would be really, really challenging for them to see or understand, right? Perhaps they're telling us something that actually is useful feedback, but it just feels invalidating, right? Because sometimes if we're criticized or if we're told things that, you know, we weren't thinking about before, maybe I did something wrong, we might take it to be an invalidation, but maybe the person's just trying to give us feedback, okay? So that's always important to consider as well. So sometimes it could actually be a good learning opportunity, and it's not just like, you know, they're making me feel good, okay? Sometimes things that don't feel good could be a potential for growth because we could learn something new. So that's what the self-inquiry is also about. So we also should, you know, take responsibility for our emotional reactions and behavior and how it impacts other people, right? So if I were yelling and screaming at a customer service clerk and I feel like, well, you weren't validating my concern about this product being broken, I have to remember, like, am I behaving in a way that's making it hard for that person to validate me? Maybe am I saying things in a way that's really insulting and I have to change my own approach, right? Or, you know, how should I, you know, communicate more assertively the next time, right? See what I'm saying? Like maybe there was something for me to learn about the way I went about the situation and it just wasn't about the person, you know, and what they did, right? So anyway, I think I said enough about that. So that's the last slide. Okay, so I hope that added to your understanding about validation, right? Again, excellent skill. Validation is always useful, so I hope you'll keep doing it. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. All right, bye for now, guys.